Hey there, I'm Kelly Sienkowski with Potomac Local News, and today we're putting the spotlight on our local Board of Supervisors election. With me now is Michael Catell, who is running for the Falmouth District Supervisor. Thanks for joining me, Mike. How's your day going so far?
You're welcome. Doing well. How are you, Kelly?
Can you tell us a little bit about you, Mike?
Sure. I am husband and father. Husband, 33 years, married to my wife, Janine. Father of six children, grandfather to four. From Pennsylvania native. I've been here in the area 22 years. Came here as part of a job relocation package, a promotional opportunity for a position with more responsibility, more management. That was in 2003. Chose South Stafford because we saw the value in the county in terms of the schools. Our kids were really young. All of our children, except for one, our youngest, was born in Pennsylvania. Also chose this area of the county because I was, like so many of my neighbors and friends here, working inside the Beltway. At that time, I was working for a national nonprofit organization based in Alexandria. And so one of the final deciding factors was choosing to live in a subdivision that's just less than a 5-minute drive from the VRE, the Virginia Railway Express commuter station at Leland Road. So that's my profession. Professionally, I have 30 years experience in national nonprofit management of nonprofit organizations, including those that are national in scope in education, health, and the policy sectors. Currently, I'm executive vice president of development for a national nonprofit in the policy space based in Washington, D.C. So marketing, communications, revenue development, all from a business angle or standpoint has been my professional work now for 30 years.
So is this your first time stepping into the political world? Your first election?
No, actually, I ran for office when I was in my early 20s. Just after I was married, I actually ran for what's called a borough. Or, where I grew up, there were municipalities classified as municipalities or boroughs. Ran for borough council. I wasn't victorious at that time, but learned a lot. And then I served on a zoning hearing board for about 10 years following that in the community in which I was born and raised before moving to Virginia again in 2003.
So for viewers, we're asking all of our candidates for the Board of Supervisors the same 5 questions. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that now. So
Sure.
we've got projects like these, some of the data centers that have been proposed around the area. They
Hmm.
stir up a lot of strong reaction from our residents. So how would you balance economic development with the concerns about the environment, traffic, and the overall quality of life for the residents?
Sure. Well, I think no matter the issue, and when it comes to growth, growth is going to happen. Growth has happened clearly in Stafford County, uh, especially over the past 20 years, where we have significantly grown in terms of our population now being over about 165,000 people. Very significant growth in 20 years, and I think that's first of all, we need to accept that as a we just don't want to say, well, growth won't happen or growth will happen. We need to understand that it's a reality and it's going to happen. The question is, to what extent do we, the county, need to sort of welcome that growth and manage it accordingly. So whether it's data centers or commercial development or single family housing units or whatever the case might be, it has to be carefully managed. And I think the balance is key. You mentioned the word, what, or the question, what would I do or how would I approach that in terms of balancing it all? I think first and foremost, we need to look at everything in a sort of in a whole package. And my belief as a manager, as a leader, and the experience I've had in my well, professionally, personally as well, but mostly professionally, is that you need to look at the whole of the package. You need to have a vision and you need to have something. I had a mentor about 30 years ago in sales and presentations and marketing, which led me into the nonprofit space, who used to say, begin with the end in mind, Mike, or to the team, begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to go? Where do you need to be? by a certain period in time. And I think that that's what the county needs to, although it's been doing that to a degree, I think we need to put a little bit more emphasis on that, Kelly, and we need to look at the whole of the package when it comes to development, when it comes to the economic side of the equation, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to, what are our priorities and how are we prioritizing? We can't chew it all at once. We can't bite it all off at once, but we need to be prepared to understand, to accept, and manage growth for the good of the citizens and the good of this county. This county has an impeccable reputation, as you know, in terms of being a great place in terms of quality of life to raise a family. Some of the more, shall we say, less desirable elements in terms of congestion, that sort of thing that has come along with growth, mainly, that we need to work on. But relative to the quality of life still in Stafford County, it's pretty significant. It's high and it's profound, and we need to keep it that way.
So, you were talking about the big picture. The next question is this Stafford billion-dollar budget and the continued growth that you were just talking about. How would you ensure that the county spends wisely, ensuring that we're supporting infrastructure and the services that the county offers without overspending or overbuilding?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think regardless of time period, leadership, particularly if we have a change on the board relative to, in this case, a seat that would be going potentially from Supervisor Baumke to either myself or my opponent. I think when we have these changes relative to, again, whether it stays on this side of the aisle, if you will, in terms of the Republican Party or not, I think it's a good time for the board to kind of examine everything. And I would like to see, and we know we have management and we know we have the necessary controls in many respects. We know we have auditing. These things occur as part of good practice, due diligence. But I think we might want to just look even deeper. We need to look at everything. We need to be very carefully focused on what is our action. How are we taking action within the context of management, both in terms of the administration, that is our county staff, administrator, but also the Board of Supervisors? Is the board leading effectively? To what degree does it need to lead perhaps differently? And I'm not saying that this is a fait accompli or something that would actually like a be all and end all, but I think it's a process. It's a process of discovery. It's a process of developing the right questions and developing very, very pointed and specific questions. How are we spending? What are we spending? What are our priorities? First of all, what are the priorities of this county? And I want to keep public safety as a top priority. I want to make sure our system, our educational, our high schools, our elementary schools, our middle schools are funded to the extent that we possibly can. We know we have come a little bit of a distance, especially over the past few years. We have continued to come forward and fund the schools, but there's more to do. And I think we need to have each sort of primary or partner funding agency, schools, the county itself, administration, how we do business, how we support business, economic development, which is very, very key, I think needs to be significantly examined in terms of how we are doing our work.
That makes sense, Mike.
Because at the end of the day, let me just add this point, because I think it'd be helpful to sort of round out my thinking on that question. All of the funding, or vast majority of it, of course, not all. We have potentially some grants there in the mix and some funding that comes in through alternatives. But the vast majority of the funding, of course, comes from our residents, our taxpayers, and yes, the businesses that have a certain tax assessment as well. But when we're talking about roughly 70% of the tax, sort of the leveling upon which we can set that tax and then collect that tax, that's coming from residences. And yes, we do have a very significantly, I would say comfortable, I would say very, very, very significant median income in this county. Let me put it that way. All right. We are one of the top in the country. But we also have a population. We also have some very, very challenged, some pockets of challenge relative to income earning. And also the fact that we have been dealing with a lot of pressures from above or not from our making, if you will, our governing, the way in which the county has set priorities, the veteran challenge relative to funding that cannot be realized from veterans who are disabled. We've got a lot of challenges relative to income, and with an over 30% increase in taxes over the past 3+ years, that's not sustainable. I don't see that as sustainable. And that's something that I would pledge to the citizens of Falmouth and the entire county as a member of the board, to make certain that we are being absolutely precise relative to our budgeting and our planning. Do we have a plan that is actionable and realistic? And how are we managing those resources? Because it's one thing to say we need to do more. It's quite another to say that we have the ability to sustain where we're at. And I think economic growth, economic development, and new funding formulas are also going to be key to adding or diversifying our income base relative to tax and fee income. And that's something that I'm going to look at very carefully.
Thank you, Mike. So, kind of along that lines with our next question, a lot of the recent board decisions, from zoning questions to school funding, data centers, and all of that, have drawn strong public feedback from Stafford County's residents. So what's your approach to ensuring that residents are being heard and included in the process?
My approach is one of complete openness in terms of if it doesn't concern a proprietary legal personnel matter, something that needs to be addressed in a private way, in an extraordinarily careful or completely private way, it absolutely has to be opened. There is no room for, we use the phrase hidden agendas or alternative agendas, and that exists. I think it's part of our challenge as men and women, right? As humanity, we tend to, whether it's driven, you get driven by fear or uncertainty, or something takes over and you begin to kind of hide something or change something. Why? My question would be, why do that? Let's put it all on the table. If you have a position and your position is one of keeping taxes low, in my case, it is, I need to explain why I believe that's important and how I would go about doing it. If I have a resident and a fellow citizen who disagree with me, and that would be the case for sure, even in terms of maybe that issue where we might agree on everything else or many other issues, and then he or she would say, I don't agree with you on that, and here's why. I don't mind. Tell me. Let's talk. I can learn as much from that individual as he or she can learn from me. And I think that's the case on the board as well, as a whole. I think the board members, I think I am not going to criticize any board member. I'm not going to criticize past boards. That's irrelevant. But I do believe that board members have a responsibility to first and foremost listen, whether they like what's being said or not. Listen to the citizens. Number two, listen to each other. And there will be disagreements, different ways of approaching the same question. Perhaps we're even hearing the question differently, or the input. Listen carefully. The old saying is, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, something to that effect. Let that be a lesson for us. Let that be a guide. We need to do more listening, less talking, more governing, more leading for the people of this county.
I appreciate that, Mike. So our next question is about protecting green space and preserving the character of Stafford County. So as development continues, how would you work to protect the park, the green space, and the county's character for the future generations that come here?
Well, I'm aware that the county currently has a purchase of development rights. That sole purpose being to protect agriculture acreage within the agricultural areas of the county. I believe, you've got to have balance. No matter in what you're talking, we cannot develop every single parcel of land, okay, and kind of run roughshod over our protected areas our rivers, our streams, our creeks, etc. And I'm not saying that that's happening now. I believe it's not, because the county, as I said a moment ago, has this sort of protection umbrella in place. And I believe the program is working. I believe it will continue to work. For example, the state matches the county funds to execute the program. So, I think it's important that we have these protections in place. We need to keep them in place, because green space is part of the quality of life. Just as much as an excellent education is for our children, just as much as economic development is for our families as a whole, and to generate more business, more entrepreneurship, the return on investment into those businesses, be it small businesses, be it data centers, whatever the case might be, that's important. Green space is important as well.
My first question is about vision and your leadership. So if you are elected, what would be your top priority for Stafford County? And what kind of leadership do you hope to bring to the Board of Supervisors?
My top priority is to stabilize, keep our taxes low, while putting a great amount of emphasis relative to the board being a leader, relative to the board being a partner with Economic Development Authority, et cetera. I think economic development is one of the absolute keys to our growing success, or to our continued growth. Responsible growth. As a Board of Supervisor member, I would bring not only to inform my constituents in Falmouth and across the county, but to the board as well, a very focused, driven, what I call openness to collaboration. Again, listening is important. Listening is absolutely essential. We need to state our positions. We need to be clear on them. We need to give that context, that reason why. But we also need to understand where other people are coming from. Even if we disagree on how to get there, the reality is the board members are serving the interests of the citizens of Stafford County, and we need to do that with a responsiveness, which is what I will do, with a responsibility to protect and preserve the quality of life in this county, and using common sense values. I believe, as a common sense, conservative leader, somebody who puts the individuals and the interests of freedom first. We need to have government. Government is important. Government is essential in certain services. It also needs to be guided and managed properly. It cannot be the be-all and end-all, and supervisors set that example, and I believe set the pace relative to how we help our county stay, really, as far as I can see it, at the top of its game in terms of quality of life of counties throughout Virginia and, frankly, the nation. So responsiveness, responsibility, common sense values, and a work ethic that will not quit until the job is done. Whatever that project is, whatever that job is, that's what I would bring to this role and to the board as well.
Thank you. And then we're asking each of our candidates a quick question relative to your specific district. So for the Falmouth district, we're wondering, we have a lot of historic areas in the Vought corridor, and they're all facing a lot of pressure from the increasing development. So how would you approach redevelopment in those areas to preserve the character, but also promote thoughtful investment?
Yeah, I think it's essential. Being a student, let me say this first. When I was a formal, I guess, in my time as a student in college, I think we're always students to a degree in terms of learning, but that's for a different discussion. I was political science and history major. I came at, I really matched the two because I had a really strong desire for understanding. We know in part who we are because of where we have been. That may sound a little trite to some, but it's absolutely the truth. Everything is in a continuum. And so looking at the history of this county and seeing the profound depth of history in so many ways, be it from the effect that it part of the Commonwealth of Virginia relative to the nation's founding, the principles on which the nation was founded, the challenges, not only the opportunities, but the challenges we have had to face as a people to make sure that equality of opportunity, of participation, of people living as they need to live as a free people is protected for all. This county embodies so much of that. And those spaces, for example, and those places in the county that are of such great and tremendous impact, be it Ferry Farm or be it any of the parks, for instance, the port areas, the areas where we used to have ports, they need to be protected, and we need to use those as an educational tool. And one of the things I think, Kelly, that I know I'd like to more to explore, certainly with the board, and perhaps the board has been doing this, but I would like to see where the board is and how the county administration and others can move this forward if it hasn't yet moved forward. Is looking at how do we celebrate the culture? How do we? And I'm not just talking about a space. You know, people used to say to me sometimes as a history major, and sometimes you still get this, like if you're talking with family or somebody who doesn't really give a care about the subject matter at all. Yeah, all you do is memorize facts and figures, and you want to go visit museums and look at dead people. No, that's not the case. It's about the effect. It's about who and what had an effect upon us. And right now, what I did yesterday, what you did yesterday, what we did 10 or 20 years ago, we moved into this county, has given some level of effect. It has had an effect on the county today. And I think we need to look at opportunities. We need to be focused on any new initiative that is potentially realistic and doable and doesn't throw the county off of its historic, let's call it historic balance point, when it comes to bridging that with economic opportunity. For example, the strategic plan of the Stafford County Board put together, the plan that the county put together, does call for one of its primary goals is around culture, is around looking at potentially a location for the Stafford County Museum and Cultural Center. You know, can that tie into economic growth somehow? Can that be tied to economic growth? I think it can. And I think if we think, you know, outside of a particular parameter where maybe we have been thinking collectively, we could discover what that is. So I think it's an important aspect of our living here. It must be preserved. It must be celebrated to the extent that we can preserve it. I think that needs to be point number one. We look at preserving rather than just kind of running over it for the purposes of more housing units or what have you. But we also need to understand that growth, as I said at the beginning of this, of my time with you, Kelly, growth it does happen. If it doesn't happen here, it's going to happen somewhere else. And we need to make sure we are prepared to lead, begin with the end in mind, and then develop the most responsive and responsible plan to help manage that growth.
Thank you, Mike. So I do want to ask really quickly, because we're all running out of time. You mentioned earlier talking about the Republican side of the aisle. What party will you be running for in this election?
As a Republican, I was endorsed by the Stafford County GOP committee. I was endorsed first by Meg Bomke, and I have significant although responsive and responsible, I mentioned that, and that's part of my track record professionally and personally as a volunteer leader locally in the area, both in my church and in Stafford Rotary and some other organizations. I'm an extrovert. I love being with people, listening to people, learning their stories. But I have pretty big shoes to fill. It was an honor to be endorsed. It is an honor to be endorsed by Supervisor Bomke. I have big shoes to fill there, and I'm going to do my absolute best to do that, to accomplish exactly what she's been able to do. But obviously, in the way in which Mike Catell would do it, remaining true to principles, remaining true to common sense conservative values, and again, it's something that I know that I can do, and I trust, and I hope that my fellow citizens here in the Falmouth District, the voters, will agree with me on that.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and for jumping into the spotlight. It's a part of our series to keep our voters informed on what's coming up in their local election.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.